Welcome to the RedState Weekly Briefing. I am your host, Aaron Gardner, and that was me playing on the guitar because we didn't have any music ready for anyone. So that was me on the guitar. I'm trying to get my screen to show up now, and here I am. And welcome to the RedState Weekly Briefing. It is October 19th. I am your host, Aaron Gardner, managing editor of RedState.com. With me this week, we have Caleb Howe, we have Joseph Cunningham, and we have Thomas LaDuke. For all you guys on Twitter who are asking us how we're going to talk about Ebola this week, how much time we're going to spend on Ebola this week, who has Ebola this week, well, let me just let you know, it's your mom. We're not talking about it this week. We're not talking about Ebola this week. It's not going to be a featured segment. If it does come up, I blame Caleb Howe. So we're just going to start off that way, and we're gonna jump right into this week's major subject. I kind of avoided this the other week because we've had a lot of other news going on, but I really want to talk about same-sex marriage. I want to talk about what the Supreme Court did by denying cert on the challenge to the district courts, and where we're at with this now, and what's happening. And
wait.
Caleb is already upset with me. He's legit upset with me because of the intro to the show for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe he didn't like my beautiful strumming of guitar. So let me go to him first and ask him what he thinks about the recent news coming out about. See, Caleb doesn't want to play with me right now. But
wait a minute. Hold on. Wait. Do you want to come out about something? Is that why you want to talk about gay marriage right now?
No. The reason why I want to talk about gay marriage is specifically because of a few events that have happened this last week with the Pope coming out and saying that he now has a softer tone, or at least the media claiming that the Catholics are trying to have a softer tone towards homosexuals and gay marriage and gay unions, and then also things like the Supreme Court basically paving the path for gay marriage to become law in states despite constitutional bans or constitutional definitions of what marriage is. And just kind of the whole course of what's happening and how this is changing the debate here. And one specific thing that I want to point out is we've, for a long time, conservatives have said, where is this going to end? You know, is it going to be civil unions? Is it going to be marriage? Is government going to get involved in this? What's the end game here? And that's kind of what I want to discuss today. With this discussion with same-sex marriage. And one of the things that I want to discuss is something that Eric has brought up a bunch, his meme basically of you will be made to care. For a long time we've been told, you know, if you don't want to have a gay wedding, don't have one. If you don't like gay marriage, don't have one. Well, what are the options if you're a minister, a priest, a pastor, a man of faith, of any faith tradition really, except for some modern schisms? What are you to do when a gay couple comes to you and wants you to marry them, which is considered a sacrament in many religions? What are you to do at that point? Are you to marry them, or are you to fight against it, and are you to lie down if you get sued? These are actual things that we need to talk about in our society because they are happening. We have a report that in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, there is already a lawsuit against two pastors who refused to perform a same-sex marriage in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Caleb, is there a reason why you're muted, or are you just chilling?
Nope. Yeah, I was talking to someone else.
Okay. Let me go ahead and go to you first. What do you think about this? I mean, I consider this to be a pretty big shift in our society. Where we're going with this and what it's going to do to Christianity and the church. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm always mystified by things that Catholics do, so that's the first thing I'll say. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's a shift. The way I understand it is all they really did was put. I think you saw the same description I did. All they did was the equivalent of putting it on the agenda for later.
Well,
is that not so?
What do you mean putting it on the agenda later?
So say you're having a meeting and you're like, okay, we're having a 1 hour briefing now. We're going to meet with the rest of the company at 3 p.m. Here's the list of things we're going to talk about, and they basically
the
list to talk about.
Yeah, you're talking about the synod and the reports that came out of there. Yeah, okay, yeah. And yeah, that's basically how it was explained to me by other Catholics. I'm not Catholic myself, but it was explained that this was kind of more of an agenda item, and whether or not it would make it to the next cut of agenda items and blah 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 blah. So I'm not that concerned, but what I want to talk about, I think it's the undertones of what's happening here, and the decision by our Supreme Court to deny cert, kind of inaction to avoid the question itself, made the question larger and more looming, and also caused pressure throughout the Western United States already for marriages to occur like immediately and on the spot. And so now we have legal same-sex marriages in Colorado and Utah and some other places. So I guess my concern is more what the Supreme Court, the position that the Supreme Court put everybody in by not taking up the case when they did. That's what I'm worried about. The Pope and what we see from Hillsong Church and Brian Hughes.
As a matter of law, wasn't that the right decision? That they didn't have enough reason to question the appellate court's decisions?
Well, as a matter of law, the thing is the Supreme Court, they kind of reserve the right to look at any case, don't they?
I don't work there.
Well, I mean, from my understanding, the Supreme Court reserves the right to look or not look at any case at any given time. That's my understanding, at least. As far as whether there was any legal
when the
barring,
flag is thrown, you go with the call that was made on the field, unless there's enough evidence to overturn the call.
Right, and I understand that, but I guess
unless you're in the pocket of the Green Bay Packers.
That's true. But what it is for me is, the Supreme Court should have known what was going to happen from their denying cert. They should have taken. What was that?
I'm sure they did know. It's not like it was a surprise. They were like, I didn't foresee this fallout from our decision. Obviously, they knew.
Well, I mean, but here's the thing. The fallout that we're seeing from it, I believe that's a bigger issue in the long run than whether or not the court had reason to look at the deny cert or not. I mean, I don't think there's any legal standard that barred them from picking up the case. I mean,
think the question is the fallout from the political movement is going to be far more severe than the fallout from the Supreme Court's particular decision. The fallout from the political movement that's putting it in front of the Supreme Court in the first place, that's the real problem, because they aren't just trying to make something not illegal. They are trying to make recognition of something mandatory. Those are two separate issues. And that's a case that's going to have to be brought probably by a complainant on our side, as opposed to somebody trying to make it legal.
Well, I understand what you're saying there, and I guess where I'm coming from is I believe that the Supreme Court has now acted as a catalyst for the political movement, and that's what concerns me.
The political movement is using the Supreme Court as a catalyst. I just think that's beside the point. There's a much bigger question.
Well, I don't think the Supreme Court should allow itself to be used by that, and I want to get into all the questions that are involved in this same-sex marriage stuff, and I'm only starting there because that's what starts the conversation currently in current events. We can go back, and I mean, Thomas LaDuke and I were talking before the show about some of this stuff, so let me bring LaDuke in here, and let's talk a little bit about the political movement that's behind this that Caleb's alluding to. And what was it? I believe it's the Triangle Foundation, and there's all sorts of different gay rights groups, human rights campaign. They all have worked in conjunction to put forward this basic thing. I like to phrase it as making deviancy the new decency. And I don't mean that in a hey they're evil way, but I'm saying it's deviant from the norm. And they're going to make that the new decency, and that's what I believe Caleb means when he talks about they're going to force acceptance and force acknowledgement on us with this, and that's the whole point to the You Will Be Made to Care effort that Eric Erickson has made on RedState. So, LaDuke, I know you and I talked. I don't know if you want to share on air or not, but just give me some of your perspective from the people you've known and the people you've talked to about the movement side and what their goals are and what their aims are.
I like cornflakes. Cornflakes. About 10, 11 years ago, I had a friend of mine, Sean. Hi, Sean. How you doing? Good to see you. God bless. Sean worked for an organization, the Triangle Foundation here in Ferndale, Michigan. We're at a wedding. This discussion came up. He pretty much laid out exactly how this was going to roll out. And I, in retrospect and going back and thinking about the conversation, I'm literally stunned at how well planned out this was. Now, I don't know, if he was in touch with national people or whatever. We never got that deep into it. But he basically told me exactly how this was going to go. And the first thing was they had to redefine the word marriage. And marriage, at the time, my argument to him was you can't redefine a word that you did not, quote-unquote, invent and or create. And no more than you can say the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. You cannot redefine words to meet whatever the PC, mood is at the time. But his argument was that this was what they were going to do, and that the whole gist of it was that, and this was key, it was immoral. It was highly immoral that the state recognized private institutions such as churches and gave them tax benefits, tax breaks, essentially being tax exempt. And that his end goal, his wish, his dream, was that one day he'd be able to take his soulmate and go to St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York and get married there, because it was immoral that the Catholic Church would not allow he and his soulmate to get married in there, because the building was so beautiful, the architecture was glorious, and that this was inherently somehow immoral. He didn't get into any other name calling, or really.
In other words, they're entitled to the interior of that building because, like,
yes,
they believe everything in the world ultimately belongs to them.
Well, and it's funny that hold on. It's funny that this guy wants to call out the church as immoral for being separated from the government, because that's why they're tax exempt, to make sure that they have that separation and can't be controlled by the government or control the government. He's offended by that immorality, but he's not offended by his own immorality of, and I don't mean him being homosexual, I mean his own immorality of trying to impose his will on someone who is unwilling.
Well, okay,
to do
so that was the second part of what I've brought up to people when I've talked.
Aaron, are you eating dinner while you're talking?
No, I'm eating a cookie. My wife made chocolate chip cookies. So
thanks for sharing with the class. So this was the point that I brought up to my friends who are gay, is that, okay, if I say I'm going to stand shoulder to shoulder with you, and I'm going to fight for all of the benefits that government gives those that currently can get married, man and woman, as defined long time ago. All the benefits, tax benefits, property transfer, all of that. Civil union, is that good enough? And 90% of them will say absolutely not.
Right.
And they don't understand why. Because they think somehow that inherently, if they can't join into a union recognized by the state and call it marriage, that they are somehow being disenfranchised. And that's pure baloney.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolute pure baloney. If you get every benefit, tax, everything, and it's called a civil union, how are you being discriminated against or being disenfranchised? Because you can.
They're not, but that's not what they're about. Once again,
that's what has to be pointed out.
You don't get to talk until you're finished with your cookie. Go
ahead. This is the point, is that Sean 10 or 11 years ago, he and others evidently had laid this out, and they knew exactly what they were doing. This was going to be a long-term, quote-unquote, battle. They had this laid out. That first thing they had to do was basically redefine the word marriage, and from that, everything else is going to fall like dominoes, and it is perfectly. It's a wonderful plan. Now, at least in my view, I try to engage people and say, wait a minute, if you're getting everything you want statistically in terms of all the benefits that I would have if I got married, why does it still have to be called marriage? And some people absolutely, to play into what Aaron's doing right now, they lose their cookies, and they don't know why.
Look, it's all part of the whether they consciously think of it or not. It is all part of the liberals' ongoing war on religion, and specifically on Christianity, and specifically on the existence of Christian churches. That's what it all boils down to. That's why Michael Moore associated Ebola with abortion, because he wanted to attack the hospital for being Texan, because Texas has too many Christians. They tie everything back to if they don't believe in evolution, it's always something. There's always some way it relates back to whatever Christians think is definitely wrong. That's their rejection because of their own interior battles, their own moral and emotional battles that they undergo through their life, trying to understand their place in the universe and whether or not they believe in particular religion and whether or not they believe in God, and they externalize it into a war on the outside because they can't handle the debate internally. Most adults who are conservative handle questions about faith and religion and science as an internal debate. They keep the internal part internal, but liberals, they put it all on everyone else because, once again, they want to avoid the responsibility of making the decision on their own and force everyone else.
Well, and I also I want to go back. Go ahead.
Michael Moore, real quick, is a Catholic. He's an adorable. So
is Nancy Pelosi.
Damn, we got them all.
But
Pelosi may be, but Michael Moore, I guarantee you, he doesn't think that. It's if she thinks she's Catholic, then that's between her and God. But I don't believe that he thinks that. I don't think he thinks he's Catholic. It's probably just something he says.
Well, he was brought up and instructed by a bishop by the name of Thomas Gumbleton here in Michigan, and Gumbleton was a huge supporter of the Nicaraguan Daniel Ortega, and he was one of these social activist Catholics that basically the government basically needed to impose the will of everybody, the church, as opposed to just letting them letting people fly by the seat of their pants.
Well, I think it's a legitimate point of view to be liberal or even socialist, not communist, to be socialist in your political beliefs and faithful in your religious beliefs. That's a legitimate point of view. I'm just saying that I don't think Michael Moore holds that position legitimately. I think
he does. So that is an interesting.
Well, he goes all out of his way to mock the very idea of faith at every possible opportunity.
And that perfectly brings back to the point I want to make. This visceral hatred that we seem to see from the professional homosexual left. That's how I'm going to put this, because I don't think every homosexual out there agrees with the political movement that's out there. But the professional homosexual left, the visceral hatred that we see from them towards the church, we see it in all sorts of ways. LaDuke and I were talking earlier about this, and one of the ways that we see it is this premise that because churches are tax exempt, that society, that all of us are communally subsidizing that church, and therefore we have a right to that church. And that's what they predicate this belief that they can go in and force these pastors to perform these same-sex marriages. It's because they believe they are subsidizing the church just by the simple fact that the church isn't being taxed. And it's such a ridiculous premise. I hate this premise so much when I see people use it. When somebody's not taxed, that doesn't mean they're subsidized. That's stupidity right there. When the government takes money from one person and gives it to another, that's a subsidy. But when the government just doesn't take the money in the first place, that's not a subsidy. They're just getting to keep what people give them. And the reason they get to keep that is because they're the people who are out there in the community trying to be charitable, trying to help out people who are homeless, people who need food, people who need God. And that's what pisses off the homosexual professional left so much, because they don't want there to be a creator. They want there to be a government that governs and controls.
The tax thing, it all ties together with their philosophy every part of liberal philosophy boils down to just a few essential points. Everything else is just an extension of it. And one of those few basic points is that what you have isn't yours. That's the bottom line. What you have isn't yours. It's everybody else's.
It's mine.
The government takes some taxes from you. They see it as the government allows you to keep X amount. It's not how much they take, it's how much you keep. That's how they see it. It's like the glass half empty, glass full thing.
Well, I mean,
they don't see how much water was taken from the glass, but rather how much is left. Right,
exactly. You know, and it's the same, like you said, no matter what it is. If it's the 99% versus the 1%, if it's the 47% who don't pay taxes, whatever it is, it's always, you know, what can we still get? Even if we're 95% of the way to success, they want that last 5%. They want it all, always, and they want it free. And it's just ridiculous, honestly. Now, I want to go now. Obviously, myself, LaDuke, Caleb, we're a little bit older than Joe, although Joe does have a glorious beard. I just want to kick it over to Joe for a minute to get the younger perspective on this. The millennial YOLO loser perspective. Go for it.
Yo.
Actually, for attributing YOLO to me, this is actually my last show. It's been a great run, guys, and I will I'll miss you. As far as this goes, being a young millennial on the issue of gay marriage, I'm more of a squish and more of the libertarian lean. But where I think most libertarians get it wrong is that this is the Idaho case in particular is the case of government getting involved. What's going on?
Oh, I just want you to keep talking, bro.
Music. But also, did you smear Vaseline on your camera lens?
What?
Did you smear Vaseline on your camera lens?
I can't hear anything other than anyway.
I really threw Joe off there.
God. Anyway, libertarians get it wrong in the idea that it's okay for the government to do this because on any other issue, libertarians would be saying, wait, government shouldn't be involved in like regulating business, so why is there an exception to this? And that's what really bothers me.
Are there libertarians that are for this, the government intervening in Idaho?
Yeah, if you take a look at Eric's post on RedState about it that he put up yesterday, he mentions that, and a lot of it is actually like the Reddit atheist libertarians, which are the worst. Anything,
Joe, before you go too far, I want to note, we have a mutual friend, Neil Stevens at RedState, and he talks about the evangelical atheist versus the regular, atheist. He doesn't believe in God, and he has no reason to make sure you don't either. So it's the evangelical atheists that I have a real problem with.
Right, and it's those, and it's when they're libertarian that they're absolutely awful, and they generally, when they're evangelical atheists that are libertarian, they come from Reddit, which is really like the source of some of the worst. Between Reddit and Tumblr, that's what's ruining the internet today. But anyway, that's a side note.
Wow.
Yeah, I hate contemporary internet culture with so much passion.
So Cunningham downtown.
Contemporary internet culture, as opposed to internet culture.
Right. Yeah,
Not like the internet back in the days of Rome.
Yeah, back in the old days when you could find porn on accident just by typing unicorn. I don't know.
No, I don't. Let's not be hyperbolic here, Cal.
Our internet was? We stood outside and we yelled real loud. A retweet was when somebody else yelled what you said.
Can we go back to the guitar, because that was less distracting than Caleb yelling at me.
When I grew up, a retweet was called an echo.
And stared at the sun until our eyes burst into flames, and people were chickens over it.
With an onion tied around my belt, as was the style at the time.
Anyway, where was I?
Same-sex marriage. You were trying to tell us why it's justified.
I'm not trying to justify it. I said the whole. I'm the gay marriage squish in the group. I'm okay with it. But I don't think that government should go in.
A different word than squish for that.
Yeah, for sure.
I chose that word on purpose.
Well,
that uncomfortable gay marriage squish in the back of the room. Anyway.
Joe, there's a reason why I asked about the libertarian, because I'm more libertarian than anything. And
right, but there is a segment like the evangelical atheist libertarians who are like, yeah, this is great, let's get God out of everything, then let's get a government out of everything so that we can have our libertarian utopia. Like, that's their logic, and it's aggravating.
Okay.
But
well, you know, here's the thing, and I was talking to LaDuke about this before as well. I'm so frustrated by, and this is a millennial thing to an extent, but it's also a long-time progressive thing. This idea of a completely secular government that doesn't even recognize a creator at all. I'm so disgusted by it because, in essence, when you remove the creator from the equation, we are nothing but a bunch of men creating laws, and there are no inalienable rights. There's nothing that the government can't take and control if they are the ultimate authority. And when you take away the creator or the universe or whatever you want to call it, some outside entity beyond even natural law, it gets lost. And that's where we lose. And that's where I think we are right now, honestly.
And they believe philosophically and religiously, a lot of them believe that morality is an agreed-upon social norm based on group intelligence. Crowd-sourced morality is essentially what they're saying. And, of course, they separately but also believe that the function of society is carried out through the process of government. So when you put those two things together, what you come up with is government is essentially the arbiter of morality.
Right, and that's worked, you know, so well in places like Germany in 1938. I mean, it was phenomenal, right?
Gas prices were in Germany in 1938.
Gas prices? Did you just say gas prices?
I did. Gas prices, fuel prices, 5 cents a gallon. You're a jerk.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, when we take the idea of absolute truth, right and wrong, out of the equation completely, it's really all everything goes. You know,
right,
whatever you want to do, you can do.
They don't think they're taking right and wrong out. They think that what they're doing is right and that what you're doing is wrong. That's what
no, I understand that they believe that, but what I'm saying is they've taken away, they've killed their own argument because there is no absolute truth. If I'm to believe them and there's no absolute truth, then we can just argue forever until we're all bloody corpses on the ground.
No absolute. I mean, they don't care if there's an absolute truth. They believe in crowdsourced truth that comes from. Why do you think that they are always talking about global warming consensus?
Truth is.
I think they're always saying global warming consensus because it's propaganda. If you repeat enough time that everybody believes it's happening, then everybody's going to believe it's happening.
It's groupthink. It's the impulse to groupthink. They embrace it.
Modern liberal culture is all about relative truth. There is no one truth. There is whatever they think society should be at the time.
Right. It's decided upon. That's why they don't think that they think it's okay to judge Christians who don't want to perform a gay marriage, but they have nothing to say about Muslim nations that execute them, because that's a different culture. Over there, they've decided their morality. In America, we're deciding ours. That's how they think it works. It comes from a group decision on what the society considers moral and immoral.
What the intellectuals of that society think, and that's what's so dangerous, is the fact that we have a bunch of intellectuals who sit there and say this is what's right and this is what's not, and if you disagree, you're arguing against thousands of years of science, and that's how they leave it.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, though. I don't even believe we're arguing against a bunch of intellectuals the way Caleb explains it. The way Caleb explains it, we're arguing against, you know, a morality driven by polls. A poll-driven morality is what Caleb's really talking about.
They pay lip service to. When they talk about the people who count, they don't mean us. It's not something that we're going to be part of the decision-making process. They mean the people that they consider already moral are the ones who are going to decide what's moral. In other words, anyone who thinks like them gets to decide for everyone else. It's the essence of Howard Dean. He says he believes and exudes this point of view every time he's on television. That's how every piece of his worldview operates. he is the arbiter of what is correct. Those who disagree are therefore not just wrong, but evil.
I love that.
And exactly, and that's, that really goes to what I was trying to say with that small clip phrase of decency is the new, or deviancy is the new decency, and that's what they've done. They've flipped it all on its head. The idea that I wouldn't want to perform a gay marriage, well, that's horrible. That's awful. That's indecent. That's where we're at. That's the madness that we're dealing with now.
This is not a new idea. I saw this on the internet earlier today, actually, after Aaron had gotten off the phone with me and he was done yelling. But what we should do is have next year a picnic, a get-together for single white heterosexual men. We'll do a gathering. We'll put posters up all over, a town and everything and such, and just watch the people who constantly preach about tolerance come out against us, because we would have the audacity to advertise, to have an event, and you can invite everybody, it doesn't matter, but that would be single white heterosexual men.
What would the event be for? To like get them laid or something? What's going on?
I don't know, maybe to exchange recipes.
Oh, well, that I'm sure that'll go over. Awesome.
Yeah, aren't you catching what is the tolerance? Okay, the people who are preaching about that there's so much intolerance in the world, they would be coming out of the woodwork bitching that anybody would have the audacity to actually promote an event that was white, heterosexual male, exchanging recipes, cookie recipes.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I could see people coming out to protest that just because people are stupid. They could be. Yeah. Well, no, not whites only.
I have no problem with that.
Not whites only. He's just saying. He's saying advertise it as that, but say that anybody could be invited.
Welcome. Anybody could show up. But the banner is going to be. You could say at any heterosexual male. This would be the same thing. You would still have the intolerance crew come swiping out of the sky.
Well, yeah. If we tried to,
it would be the same thing if you said every heterosexual male welcome. I mean, at least you can have, because the gay guys may not want to hook up with the girls that you're trying to create. But when you narrow it down by race, I think you're entering into a little bit of
you are. So basically, I think what LaDuke was trying to say is have the reverse of a gay pride parade. Basically, have a heterosexual pride parade and see what would happen.
The reason I would object to that is because A, it would be super boring, and B, where are you going to find 50 or 100 heterosexual men that feel like walking in a frickin' parade? Seriously?
I don't want to do the parade.
I've got to mow my lawn, sorry.
I don't want to do the parade. The parade's too ostentatious.
I see a heterosexual male parade every weekend at Home Depot, so.
Well, that's work. That's man.
Exactly. That's how we parade. We parade by working.
Oh, see, there you go.
I go to Lowe's. Everybody should go to Lowe's.
Okay, there you go, Lowe's. So obviously Home Depot is not going to be an advertiser with us. Thanks a lot, Caleb.
I have stock in Lowe's.
Oh, see? Joe just came up with a great idea in the chat there. I like it. Good idea, Joe.
Yeah, I like that idea too. That's a good Tumblr address.
Thanks for showing up.
Okay, so
that's my contribution for the day. Thanks, guys.
There you are.
Speaking of Joe and him showing up, we're pretty far into the show already. What are we about? I don't know, 30 minutes in or so. 35 minutes in. Yeah. So we could go on for days about this issue, and I just wanted to bring it up today because I feel like things are happening faster in this world, and a lot of people are missing news. And the fact that we actually do have ministers being sued in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, I think that should raise some people's eyebrows, and they should understand that this isn't just a libertarian event where nobody else is getting affected, and if you don't want a gay marriage, you don't have to have one. It is a political movement that is trying to affect the church's abilities to run. And
it's their intention to revise the church. That's what they want to do.
Yes.
You should hear them all over the last few days on MSNBC talking about the Pope. What they want to do is change the way. They want to come in from the outside and revise what the church believes. All right, now just imagine doing that to Islam.
Oh my gosh.
God bless that Idaho's in the news for something other than potatoes.
Well, and the fact that you say that, LaDuke, I want to make a point on that as well that we talked about earlier. It's not a coincidence that these people chose Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, a small church to go after. That's strategic. They're looking for somebody who can't fight back in court and doesn't have the money to go the long haul. That's why you have people like Alliance Defending Freedom who have to come in and help these churches out and defend them. So it's strategic that they go to these places, and they're hoping for a reaction. They're hoping for that Tea Party hillbilly reaction to the lawsuit, so that they can say, see, look at these bunch of bigots, when actually they're the ones who are being bigoted in their behavior.
Bastards. That's a good point. But so, I still like it that Idaho's in the news for something other than the potatoes.
Yeah, that's always nice.
They do have potatoes.
They got the best potatoes, man. Idaho potatoes are great. Get them at Five Guys. If you want to sponsor us, Five Guys. If not, screw your fries. But I want to move on from the same-sex marriage subject, and let's get a little bit into the horse race. We're going to do this a little bit differently this week. We're not going to do just numbers, facts, and figures. We're going to deep dive a little bit into the Colorado Senate race and some others. So let me first go to Joe and have him run through the quick numbers, and then we'll start discussions on it. So, Joe, go ahead and give me the latest polls and results.
Okay, let's see. This week we saw a couple of polls that came out. CNN Opinion Research and Quinnipiac both had polls that kind of came out this week for Colorado. Both of them showing Gardner with a wider gap than we've seen. And again, Quinnipiac in the past had kind of shown a major lead that you didn't see anywhere else in a +8 early in September or midway through September. Now they're showing another one with a +6, so their number's gone down, but it's more closely following the trend that you've seen Gardner like breaking away from Udall uterus completely. I think breaking away from uterus is actually the wrong phrase to use there. But anyway,
Gardner is breaking away from uterus
research
and birthing a Senate run?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As far as the Senate run. Quinnipiac showing the +6 in a poll that featured 988 likely voters with a margin of error of 3.1. It was a 47-41 polling result. CNN Opinion Research was 665 because 666 would have been a bad idea. Likely voter sample, margin of error of 4 points with 50 to 46 for Gardner, so like right on the cusp of that margin of error there. The Quinnipiac one had Gardner well outside of that. But if you look at the long-term results, you see out of the last like 8 or 9 polls, you see Udall up only on one of them, and that would be the YouGov poll that came out kind of at the end of September. And for every other one, Gardner's averaging on the Real Clear Politics average +3 over Udall, so a race that looked like that was basically lean Democrat.
It was
when
safe
this
Democrat
race started. It's safe Democrat. Faded to lean Democrat, and they still weren't worried all that much. And then the switch up with Buck and Gardner, and then basically from there on, Udall just kind of stepped on a rake like every other day. And it's now come to the point where Gardner has a fairly safe lead, not the safest, and still with a couple weeks left. There's still time for him to make a mistake, but his campaign hasn't been largely. Udall's been the one who's been making mistakes. If he could stop making mistakes, maybe he can narrow that gap a little. But right now it looks like Gardner's going to come away with an upset win here.
Well, it is looking that way, and I want to talk a little bit about this race because I live in Colorado. I know a little bit about this race, and I've been looking at this, and first and foremost, I want to say, again, I probably mentioned this on the show before, the fundamentals of this race are different than 2010 and 2008, and they're also different than 2012. Now, the polling, we see Gardner with with a 3-point up on the RCP average, and that's good. He's in a good place right now. We already have ballots going out. We already have ballots being returned. Actually, we've had quite a few ballots being returned. And Ace of Spades headquarters decision desk has actually set up a page where you can go and view the partisan breakdown of the ballots that have been returned in Colorado. And Republicans are doing well and leading in some counties that we need to in order to take this race. Now, as far as Mark Udall goes, he has been in a bad position ever since the beginning of this. Most of the idea of him being a safety is that he, came in and really did well in 2008. Now, that was on the coattails of Barack Obama in a banner year for Democrats, I might add. Now, the fundamentals are much.
You should mention the uterus where you're getting that from, or you could just tell them where they can see the video.
Oh, yeah, Mark Uterus, where I'm getting that from is in a debate at the Denver Post, prior to the Denver Post coming out and endorsing Cory Gardner for the Senate. One of the debate moderators, her name is Lynn Bartles, she's a reporter for the Denver Post, she does politics, she's really good. She actually had noted that Mark Udall had focused so much on the birth control issue and social issues that some people had started calling him Mark Uterus. Later on, Lynn Bartles had come out and told everyone who it was who had mentioned Mark Uterus to her first, and that was a person named Amy. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting her last name, but she was going to run for Senate as well before Cory Gardner got in the race. So that's where that came from. And the Denver Post went on to actually call Mark Uterus's campaign an obnoxious single-issue campaign that is meant to frighten voters rather than inspire them, which is pretty damning coming from the Denver Post, considering they also endorsed the incumbent Democrat for governor. So they split their ticket at the Denver Post for their endorsements. But back to Governor or Senator Uterus. He has been stepping on rakes, just as Joe said. This weekend, actually, just yesterday, a video broke of him going through and doing a lightning round of questions on a TV interview, and it was disastrous. He was actually asked if Common Core was good or bad for Colorado, and his reply was yes. I don't know if you realize it, but that's not a yes or no question. And then in the last debate that was held on 9 News, he actually said that Benghazi was the most overrated non-issue in D.C., which a lot of people found striking. Overall, his campaign just hasn't done well. The fundamentals at the beginning showed him at like 46%, and he has not gone up from that at any point. He has actually fallen while Gardner has gain traction and continue to spread the gap between them. Now, everybody wants to look back at 2010 and say, oh, well, Ken Buck at this time, same time, led by 3 points, and we all know what happened with Ken Buck in 2010. We have Senator Bennett. I'd like to just say the fundamentals of the races are completely different. Bennett had absolutely no record. 2010 was a wave year for Republicans, and the Tea Party was active, but Colorado was a different event. There was a confluence of events in the governor's race. There was the Senate race didn't get started until basically after September because of how late the primary was. Ken Buck had been attacked by the NRSC in the primary. He only had a few weeks to establish a coalition, the campaign, and try and win the Senate. There was a flub right near the end. He didn't have time to make up. And Bennett did very, very well, capturing the momentum and slowly chugging back up and basically getting Hispanic voters and female voters to show up for him that pushed him over the line. More so the Hispanic voters than the female voters. This time we have Udall with a 6-year record in office. He's tied to an unpopular president who has reached the most unpopular levels in Colorado since he's been in office. And we have an extended general campaign where Cory Gardner has been able to do a lot of damage and get a lot of shots in against Udall because he didn't have any real primary opponents and didn't have to spend any money in the primary. So it's been completely and fundamentally different, and we haven't seen Udall make up any ground. Throughout the entire summer, the war on women was on full blast here in Colorado, and Udall started at 46%, and he ended at 46%. And then after September, he started dropping. We actually have one poll now that shows him at 41%. Now, the word of caution on this, after everything I said, it might sound like we have this race locked up and it's solid. The one word of caution I want to say on this is there is the fact that polling in Colorado is hard. We don't know whether or not Quinnipiac is getting the Hispanic share right. We don't know whether or not other polls are getting things correctly. As Nate Silver from 538 said, the polls could be skewed in either way, in favor of the Democrats or in favor of the Republicans. We won't truly know. The other variable is we have an all-mail ballot election here in Colorado, and that changes everything. Ballots started hitting people's mailboxes this last week on Tuesday. People have already returned thousands upon thousands of ballots, and people are already making their choices early. So any late collapse for Gardner and any late surge for Udall wouldn't be as amplified as it was in 2010 when we still had a vote on election day election. So that is the basics. We could still see Gardner underperform his polls by like 2 to 3%. So I would be comfortable if I saw the gap widen to a +5 Gardner lead. That would make me feel comfortable with him being at actually maybe 51, 52% the night of the election when all things are said and done. So that's my analysis on Colorado. I hope you all enjoyed it, and it took a long time. So that's the basics for you there. Joe?
One thing I did want to ask about, because I know it's somewhat tied to this, and the shift in the voting base seeming to go Republican, at least in this, is it in any way tied to the gun control legislation that there was such a huge backlash on?
I think absolutely. There's a few things that have been percolating underneath the surface here. If you are to go to Ace of Spades Decision Desk and look up the Colorado page, you'll see a lot of good turnout in El Paso County and a lot of good turnout in Douglas County for Republicans, and a lot of good turnout so far in Jefferson County. And these are all good places for us to get turnout, especially Jefferson County. Jefferson County is one of the ones that has been hit by the gun violence, actually, and they responded back then against it. Jefferson County Sheriff was against it. Of course, El Paso County is where we had one of the recall elections, and we threw out the president of the Senate, the first ever successful recall election. And then the other issue, and this is what brings in Douglas County somewhat, but Douglas County also is a gun county. They actually just instituted a open carry law there as well in Douglas County. So I do believe there's motivation from the gun laws. But one other thing that I think there's motivation coming from, and we're seeing in Douglas County and Jefferson County as well, is school choice and school reform and Common Core. I think those are subterranean drivers of this election as well that a lot of people aren't actually realizing and noticing. Douglas County had a school board change back in 2013, 2012 that put them on a reform path and opened up school choice. So I think you're seeing a lot of that there as well. I think we're seeing that show up in some of the polling where the gender gap is less than it has been, and I think some of that is moms, conservative moms, and independent moms coming home to the Republican Party on the issue of Common Core and gun.
Okay, and the only other race I wanted to look at is it's kind of a similar situation as Colorado, and that would be the Iowa Senate race, where you have Joni Ernst, who was just completely eclipsed Bruce Braley in almost all the recent polling of the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of like the last 9 polls. You see Ernst ahead in 7 of them. Braley is only ahead by 1 in one of the others, and the other one is a tie between the two. So you see Ernst in kind of the same situation there, where I think what people thought was maybe a little lean Democrat is now trending more and more Republican. But again, a 2-point average lead is still not enough to really be comfortable for yet. So if we have any listeners and viewers in Iowa, get the word out to support Joni Ernst.
All right. Well, there's your shameless plug for Joni Ernst. There's this election season. Eric has been talking about this a little bit, and the inability of the Republicans to close. And I'm going to probably touch a sore subject here for LaDuke, talking about Terry Lynn Land and her total collapse as a candidate and her inability to even be seen in public. There are, and also Webby in Oregon, and her total collapse when everybody thought she was going to be this great anti-Obamacare voice and have ability to take it away in the Senate there. And I just want to note that those two people, Kansas, and these are picks that were made by the NRSC. These people were the professional candidates who we could trust to win. And any losses that happen with those, they're going to be on the NRSC. And they shouldn't get away with it. Once again, I'm saying they need to clean house at the NRSC, get people out of there who are nothing more than consultants looking for money. And we should be having a bigger year than we are. And I think it's unfortunate that we aren't having that sort of year. Now, LaDuke, I want to ask you, since you have to actually deal with this Terry Lynn Land thing, what happened? How was she seen as this awesome get of a candidate who now can even speak publicly?
Well, let me tell you. I'm not gonna.
It doesn't help my case that I just couldn't speak publicly just then.
No.
Anyhow.
I'm not gonna lay Land being the GOP nominee,
Yes, that was on purpose.
NRSC here. That wasn't them. That was pretty much internal. The Michigan GOP wanted to make sure that they had somebody with name recognition and had money. Those were the two criterias. Terry Lynn Land was a two-time Secretary of State here. Won the first time, I think, by 10 or 11 points. Of course, that's a statewide position. And she's got some money to burn. Nobody else wanted to go up against her. The only person that was actually talked about going up against her was Justin Amash, and Land publicly said, if Amash runs, I will not run, because she didn't want to go up against Amash. So I'm not going to throw that one totally at the NRSC. That was a Michigan GOP thing. What has happened is there's been a line of different things, mostly the people that she has running her campaign suck. They absolutely do not know campaign response. She was actually up as of late as June, July by 3 or 4 points. Michigan's a blue state, even though it's run all by Republicans right now, but she should not be down 10 or 11. She should be down maybe 2 or 3, possibly up 1 or 2. She's just run a horrible campaign, and the people that are behind her campaign right now in Michigan, if these people get any more money, they should be shot. But, of course, they've already signed up Rand Paul to represent him in 2016 in Michigan, so don't expect Rand Paul to have a good showing in Michigan in the presidential primaries. Thank you. God bless.
Now, on the Oregon one, okay, so you're saying that the NRSC can't be blamed for Terry Lynn Land, and I understand where you're coming from.
No.
Well,
no, because that was... Yeah, that was
Go
a
ahead.
Michigan GOP. That was a year and a half ago. That was basically, those are the criterias.
Okay,
And
but here's the thing. Here's the thing. The criteria that you're laying out are different than what we get told by the NRSC when they're out there saying, "Oh, we need to vet candidates. We need to vet candidates. We need to vet candidates because we're the professionals and we know how to pick them." Where the hell were they on this one?
She should
And
be.
I'll tell you, she should have been vetted, but all they vetted was her damn checkbook. I bet.
Well, okay, that's probably a large part of it, but she should be winning. There's no doubt about it. She was the Secretary of State.
You can't expect a candidate to win if she can't actually go out in the public and speak. I mean, this is an epic collapse that should have been
seen. To say she should be winning. If she should be and isn't, that means she shouldn't be. Clearly, something is wrong.
Statewide, she was a statewide candidate twice. She won once by 11 points. She had already done it on a statewide basis. She isn't an unknown commodity to the people of the state of Michigan. She actually, as Secretary of State, cut. The Secretary of State's office was smaller than when she inherited it 8 years prior. She has a record. All right.
Why don't you marry her?
What's that? I'm just stating fact. That's all I'm telling you.
Well, with all that in mind, how did this happen? How did she flame out? What happened? How is she incapable of speaking that out?
Okay, I have a question. Is she largely self-funded?
A lot of it is, yeah. Yeah,
Typically candidates who go that route or their campaigns have this go it alone mentality, and so that's what I'm assuming is happening in this case.
They were going to come through with the money if she was doing well. They just pulled the NRSC just pulled $800,000 from her a week ago.
Look, I think we can all agree that it's pointless to try and unblame the NRSC for anything. I'm pretty sure they're responsible for Hurricane Anna.
I mean, their fingerprints may be something on it, but they weren't the one holding the gun on this. Strategic National, run by John Yob,
can't say holding the gun,
has totally blown this up. Now, if somebody wants to show me that John Yob at Strategic National was getting guidance from the NRSC, I'm more than happy to view it. But I've seen enough campaigns blown up by the Yobs here in Michigan to know that these guys suck, and that Rand Paul has signed them up for 2016. He's done here. They do crap. As much as I'd like to bag on the NRSC, I don't see that their fingerprints are all over this one. This is an internal.
I don't know. They claim to be out and doing candidate vetting each and every cycle, and that's their job. And to me, from what I've seen, from what I've read, this should have been something that came up in vetting, not only here but especially in Oregon with Webby and her divorce. That should have came up in vetting, and just the fact that these people are collapsing and that nobody saw it coming at the NRSC pisses me off, because I know there was activists talking about these people and saying they're no good.
It just depends on how much they wanted to be involved with it. And I don't know how much they were involved with it. This is an internal Michigan thing. If you're into Michigan politics, you know about the players and everything, and this is an internal Michigan thing. And you can go back and Strategic National blows races up. They take a lot of money.
Well, here's the thing.
Threaten to run people against you, and they blow shit up, and they take the money, they cash the checks.
Okay, so maybe the NRSC wasn't involved, and then my question becomes, why are they involved here? Why aren't they involved here when they are involved in safe red states? That's stupid, right?
Yeah, no, I like I said, they may have had some sort of input. I just don't know how much. They weren't the lead on this, though. And
no matter what, I'm blaming the NRSC, either for not vetting the candidate, for not injecting themselves in a race when they should have, or whatever. I don't know. But look, the fact is,
they injected themselves and they were wrong for injecting themselves, or they didn't inject themselves and they were negligent for not doing it. So,
well, don't inject yourselves into a red state race. That's what I'm saying.
Well, but Michigan's not a red state. That's the thing.
Right, so go ahead and inject yourself.
They should have been in a non-red state race. I think it's safe to say, though, that if you don't run something past Jackie Moon, you can't really get it done in Michigan. So.
Okay.
Jackie Moon?
Yeah. So we're just about done here.
Bob Rich.
Just about done here, but before we go, Caleb, you have a special image that we're supposed to share, right?
Special.
I put it up on Twitter earlier. The special photo that you got of the Oval Office.
My photo exclusive from.
I'm gonna try and bring this up.
They had a special Saturday night emergency Ebola meeting. The main topic of conversation was Thomas LaDuke, but apparently they also discussed other things. And I got an exclusive photo. I don't know what you're asking me in the chat.
Oh, I want the link to the photo.
I got it.
We're going to use the technologies to actually show this photo to people live on the air, and you can talk about it.
Rebuild you.
We want to make sure that everybody can see this,
This is terribly exciting right now. All of us sitting here waiting and watching.
Well, you could be talking about it on your own while I'm getting this ready,
It's a graphic. There's only so much to say.
Well, that's true. If you had sent me the link when I asked for it, though. Probably would have been better.
I don't
But
respond.
okay, so now I am sharing. Go ahead and speak, Caleb.
Right, well, this is the exclusive photo. As you can see, he's meeting with clowns. That's the Ebola strand with his googly eyes there. The book in the front is All Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About, because that's what Obama's using to fight Ebola. Obviously, there's a zombie coming in from the side because, duh.
Well, wait 1 second. Let me ask. All the way in the back behind Obama, is that Doc Ock?
That's Dr. Octopus, yeah.
Nice.
And some Doc Martens and the Dr. Feelgood album cover and Dr. Nick from The Simpsons and Dr. Pepper. Because they called in the experts. That's why those people are there.
Right.
Isn't that what you demand, Aaron? Isn't that what you wanted? You wanted the experts? Well, hello.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I want.
Well,
That's
you
who
should
I
be
want
giving him
handling
credit and
Ebola.
Kudos that he has rightly earned for his emergency Saturday Ebola meeting. Emergency Saturday night on a Saturday, not on the golf course.
He's
Come from the
seething,
golf
people.
course. He did come from the golf course to the meeting.
He was absolutely seething, wasn't he?
He was seething about the government's response to Ebola. If
Yes.
there's anybody who is unhappy with Barack Obama, it's Barack Obama.
And exactly. When he found out on the news how unhappy he was with himself, he was shocked.
Yeah, he couldn't believe it.
It was
He
impressive.
couldn't believe what he was saying about himself.
So that's our week. That's our show. That's it. That's all we got. Now, I know I said at the beginning no Ebola, but we had that one graphic and we had to show you. So I appreciate you guys coming out and watching the
story. So you'll forgive us for talking about something that's all over the news.
Yeah, you'll forgive us for talking.
News
Yeah.
program.
But I do. Hey, we were on Ebola before Ebola was cool. I'll say that. We were covering it
I noticed you
first.
didn't bring up Hurricane Anna though. Yeah.
Is there a hurricane?
According to Al Jazeera.
Oh well, I don't trust them. So that's our show for the week. Thanks for coming and watching the Red State Weekly Briefing. I am your host, Aaron Gardner. You can find me at redstate.com. You can find me at Aaron_RS on the Twitters. You can find me on Facebook, but I won't friend you. Caleb, where can the people find you?
Jeez.
Twitter.com/Caleb Howe. And also, I would like to note that this time next week, we will be talking about a brand new project that I am starting this week. And that is all I'm going to say. But it is a brand new project that I am starting this week, and we can talk about it next week.
Alrighty.
Something different.
Skittles.
YouTube.com/Digitas Daily for all the videos.
Skittles.
There you go. Joe, what's happening?
You can find me on Red State. You can find me on Twitter at Josie_Esquire, and you can find me at a mental institution near you.
Excellent. I love that. LaDuke, how you doing, and where can the people find you?
That is exceedingly true.
LaDuke at FTRRadio.com, Irish Duke 2 on the Twitters, and trying to avoid Aaron Gardner yelling at me because he's a, you know what.
I'm a big mean jerk. That's what he's trying to say. So we're going to go ahead and
people don't like you. That's funny.
end the show.
Aaron Gardner, you're the greatest hit.
Bye-bye.